Our readings today start with Philippians, chapter 4, verses 4 to 9. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. What have you learned or received or heard from me or seen in me? Put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Now our reading from Luke 19, 1 to 10. Zacharias the tax collector. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was so short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed the sycamore tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down, and at once he welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Lord, look, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." This is the word of the Lord.
Before I present my sermon today, let us focus on our floral arrangements that's so beautifully done with such soulful thought. Our eye is drawn to the centre of the arrangement. Being thankful and feeling gratitude can be complex. The structure of this design represents the openness of heart needed to recognise and be thankful. Just as this arrangement grew to be the finished display, so does thankfulness and gratitude grow from within. The arrangement is complex and diverse. It consists of different greenery representing life and beauty in the flowers with their colour and perfume. The vegetables and fruit represent nourishment. Their seeds contain the hope in our lives. The dropping black ribbons remind us of the difficulties in life in a beautiful world. The gentle draping of the greenery represents God's abundant grace. Amen. Would you be surprised if I told you that every single day we are being conditioned to be ungrateful? Now silently manipulating to see the world in our own situation with a lens of dissatisfaction, distrust and cynicism. Now that might be hard to hear, especially for those who've been actively involved with faith communities all our lives, where thankfulness is a practice encouraged. Most of us come from a generation where our beginnings were significantly less than now, quite modest in fact. Most of us worked hard to make ends meet, to grow a family, to put a roof over our heads, and we now sit in the fruit of our hard labours. We've got a lot to be thankful for, don't we? A lot has changed. Technology and communication, one of the most significant. As we look back, it was simpler. It was not as instant, not as current, nowhere near as invasive, more local to our own lives, more personal and face-to-face. We now sit right in the middle of a technological and communication revolution, which of course has so many benefits, particularly as a learning tool. Whatever your interest, you can find it in the internet instantly. Like from learning how to crochet a crow's beanie, or researching the mechanics of getting a spaceship into Mars, and everything in between. Along with the advancement of technology and the push to consume more, we now are confronted with endless forms of communication that seem essential in this modern world. We have 3 sons, all growing very different businesses, and they use all the modern communication formats available for them, miles apart from what we ever were brought up with. There are emails, messages, webpage, Facebook, Instagram, blogs, podcasts, Twitters, video conferencing, YouTube, Zooms and more, just to keep their message alive, to grow their business, but essentially to convince the consumer to buy their product. Strong advertising and promotion necessary to survive in this day of age. The end result being no one can hide from the communication overload unless they live on a deserted island. It has been estimated that in 1970, consumers were exposed to 500 ads every single day. Today, they see up to 5,000. Hard to believe. As I was reading the Sunday Mail this morning, endless pages of advertising. I already probably got to my 5,000 today. Studies have confirmed that advertising in fact makes people discontent, unhappy and ungrateful. The repetitive techniques wires the brain to believe that meaning, purpose and identity is achieved by doing and having more, leaving a general feeling of dissatisfaction, discontent and resentment with life. Mary Jo Leddy, she's a Canadian writer, a speaker, a Christian theologian and a social activist. In her book Radical Gratitude says this, and I quote, "Consumerism works only as long as we are only slightly dissatisfied with what we have. It's not a natural dissatisfaction, it's a culturally induced one. We work harder and longer in order to get just a little more. I don't have enough becomes I'm not enough, which becomes I'm not good enough, producing a sense of powerlessness. This economically induced dissatisfaction in the culture of money not only drives us to shop, but it also produces a profound dissatisfaction with one's very self, one's very soul, the core of one's being. It leaves the inhabitants of the most powerful societies in the world generally powerless and vaguely guilty. It creates dissatisfaction with other people, with work, with the world, with the church. It prevents us from seeing the goodness in others and makes us judgmental." End of quote. Now this is particularly true for our younger generation of our society, who now have become citizens of the age of anxiety. We seem to have bred a society that has a strong sense of entitlement and importance that is very difficult to appease, indoctrinated to believe via our media platforms that we are being exploited and abused by those who have power over our lives. A spirit of perpetual dissatisfaction, smothering our minds, hearts and souls, rather than a spirit of eternal gratitude. I don't know about you, but I worry for our world. Do you? I worry for the impact it has on my family, my grandchildren, and I worry for me. It does for me too, as it would for you. Is there an antidote for this dilemma? Founding father of positive psychology, Martin Seligman, remains one of the most influential psychologists in the study of happiness. In his book Flourish, he offers a simple practice that promises to enhance well-being and lower depression through the practice of gratitude. We'll just watch a little video of his.
The 3 good things exercise has you write down for a week before you go to sleep 3 things that went well today, and then to reflect on why they went well. It works because it changes your focus from things that go wrong in life to things that you might take for granted that go well. And focusing your attention on things that goes well breaks up depression and increases happiness. I don't need to recommend beyond a week typically the 3 good things, because when you do this you find you like it so much most people just keep doing it. We ask people to write down the causes because we want people to reflect on and immerse themselves in the good events. So to the extent that you write down the cause, you're thinking in more life review detail about the quality of the event.
Having read his book and listened to him personally, this practice, which has, of course, has its value, was not new to me, given most of my life in faith communities where prayers or thanksgiving was a regular practice. And there's scientific evidence to suggest that gratitude, the expressions of gratitude, have a physical impact on our bodies, with dopamine and serotonin increasing in our brain, lowering blood pressure, improving immune function, and helping us sleep better. Given the stresses of the modern day lifestyle, it is no surprise that promoting practices of gratitude has now become a commodity worth selling, making megabucks in the economy. However, I wonder if this simple approach recommended by Seligman and others is enough to counter the onslaught of negativity that we're exposed to in this modern world. Is finding 3 things at the end of the day enough when we see images of the devastation of the invasion in Ukraine and we see innocent children killed? Or the routine stories in the news every night featuring another drug-affected person causing grief into innocent community members? Or when we're struggling with our own significant life issues? To give some clarity to this internal quandary, it might be useful to recognise that gratitude has 2 very different languages. One, we use a language of feelings. You might be blown away by an amazing sunset and have an overwhelming sense of gratefulness for its beauty. Or someone gives you an unexpected gift. You feel so encouraged that somebody noticed you and appreciated what you've done and for them or for someone else. This is an emotional response. You do something to make someone feel good, they do something in return to make you feel good, a quid pro quo, an exchange, a transaction. The second approach to gratitude is the choice to make without transactional or indebted component factoring into it. Gratitude given even when it's not deserved, with no debt to pay back. It is a spiritual practice that does not necessarily come easy, but requires a disciplined choice and a deep knowing to whom we belong. When you look at history, you see sometimes that the most grateful communities are often communities that have high degrees of oppression and injustice directed towards them. One of the most evil times in history is the genocide of the Jews. Eddie Jaku, who died this year at the age of 101, was a Holocaust survivor. During World War II, he was imprisoned in 4 concentration camps. His memoirs, he writes, "I've lived for a century, and I know what it is to stare evil in the face. I've seen the very worst in mankind, the horrors of death camps, the Nazis' efforts to exterminate my life and the lives of all people. But I now consider myself the happiest man on earth." Radical gratitude? I think so. If you were to visit a black American church today, you might feel quite uncomfortable given the joy and energy that throughout the service expressed through their gospel music. The music holds a legacy of gratitude stories expressed from a period of time when enslaved with no freedom, robbed of their dignity by the hierarchical social structure that they were ruled under. All the power on top and nothing on the bottom. Praise and worship countered the constant reminder that they were less than human and owed gratitude to their masters, a great debt. They were reminded daily, "You're not grateful enough." Despite their circumstances, they chose gratitude as a deeply dignifying practice, knowing that their lives were gifts from God. Black people had to live in both worlds of gratitude. Firstly, they were forced to show their gratefulness by repaying their debt to their masters through their loyalty, subservience, and obedience. What helped them survive the injustice and the immorality of the system that controlled and held them into account was their belief and knowledge that God embraced them no matter what their circumstances. Now that's gratitude. The backdrop of our reading today of the familiar story of Zacchaeus is set in the period of Roman rule where the social structure was also hierarchical. All the power on top and nothing on the bottom. Roman imperialism's view of gratitude was not just a good and nice thing to do, it was a political, economic and social practice. The way in which the social structure was constructed was a bit like a pyramid. On the top was Caesar and his friends. At the bottom were the peasants, women and slaves. In the middle were soldiers, merchants and bureaucrats, all invested in keeping the social structure alive. People at the bottom were the poorest in society, which was most of the population, giving the pyramid a big base. Most of the wealth at the top, those people were the richest and the most powerful, with benefits flowing down negatively to the bottom. To keep this structure alive, those on top of the pyramid actively conducted indoctrination campaigns, enticing those in the middle of the pyramid to take up roles and occupations that would increase their power and their status. They were employed to control the masses, those below them, actively maintaining the social structure and the oppressive pyramid. The social structure is called the patronage system. The people on the top who held all the benefits were responsible to pass some of the benefits, such as food and protection, down to everyone else in the pyramid. The people on the bottom then had a responsibility. Their job was to pass something back up as an act of appreciation to their benefactors. This was all held together by the force of law. Gifts flowed down, gratitude and thanks flowed up. Those on the bottom of the pyramid gave thanks and gratitude in the form of taxes, tithes, tributes, worship, honour, utter loyalty and complete obligation to Caesar and his empire. This was law. The system of patronage was a system of gratitude. This was a system of obligatory gratitude, which put them into debt. Always and by law they had to discharge the debt. Failure to do so would mean exile, jail or execution, a strong motivation to follow rules. Jesus lived in a time where this kind of obligatory gratitude was the way of life. Many of Jesus' encounters was about this system of patronage. including the Zacchaeus encounter. The promotional campaigns in the local marketplaces of the time were designed to ensure strong investment of all its citizens, enticing them with promises of social trappings, of power, wealth, fame, love and respect. In return, their allegiance to the empire. Something like this. It's not quite right, but that was the kind of advertising that was promoted to get people on side. Attracting the attention of Zacchaeus, he successfully bid for the role of tax collector with the hope of becoming wealthy, fulfilling all his needs of acceptance and respect. Tax collectors pledged to raise a certain amount of money through taxes from the citizens. Anything raised over that amount agreed to was their personal profit. A local in Jericho, Zacchaeus became a wealthy man, taking advantage of those he had known for years, extorting a great deal from the people within the pyramid system. He had built up his own empire within an empire, with many under his employ. Zacchaeus benefited from the Roman social structure. But at what cost? He may have been wealthy, but did he get the acceptance and respect and love that he desired? Through the grapevine, Zacchaeus hears that Jesus is coming to town. Rumour has it that Jesus freely comments about Caesar, taxes, those marginalised. What is this guy going to say when he gets to Jericho? Is he going to tell those people not to pay their taxes? Will he tell some of those parables that nobody understands, turn people's minds against all that I've been employed to do to keep the masses in place? I've got to hear this before anyone else does because it might impact me. I've worked too hard to have all my reputation and position compromised by this guy. Will all my deceptive practices be revealed? I'm not willing to give up the money and the lifestyle that I've enjoyed and worked for over the years. In desperation, he runs to the end of the town, climbs a tree to check this guy out, to get to him before anyone else does, to cut him off at the pass. But why? Why was it important for him to do this? What are his true motives? Zacchaeus is a climber, a social climber, using those benefits, those beneath him, to elevate himself to a higher place. It did not matter who he stepped on to get there. Seduced by the media trappings of the time, to whom he held allegiance, had become a way of life. He knew nothing more. He truly believed the lies of the time. His whole way of living was now in danger if he could not find a way to control this potential threat. But Jesus sees him high in the tree. He knows everything about him. He knows his motives. Hey, Zacchaeus, come down. Come down from the system where you put yourself a cunning agent for the Roman Empire. Get out of those branches. Disentangle yourself from your way of life that does not give you the peace and respect and acceptance you really want. Come down. Be on the ground with me. I ask nothing more from you than to be your friend and accept you as you are. My only agenda is to love you and to know you and for you to know me. You owe me nothing. There is no debt to be paid. Zacchaeus does it. He's so shocked. No one has ever talked to him like this before. There was always an agenda for those above him requiring unwarranted gratitude. Always someone that despised him from those below him, demanding gratitude from them but knowing it was forced. Always a debt to be paid no matter which way he turned. Jesus says, I'm coming to your house for dinner. I'm taking you out of this destructive and distorted structure of gratitude and putting you into God's vision of gratitude. A table, not a pyramid. A place where gifts are abundant, not scarce. A place where we are all receivers and all givers, not where a few give. Others give a lot and are always in debt to those in power. Zacchaeus hears the invitation and accepts it. Something changed within him. Zacchaeus got it. He felt it. The contrast incomparable. This unmerited, undeserved experience of grace from Jesus turns him around. Quits his job, pledges to return what he now knows he defrauded from his own. He quits the system that enslaved him, experiencing a freedom not felt before. He sits in the presence of Jesus that turns the system upside down. He is radically transformed. His feelings of lostness dissolved, feelings of completeness now real. The gratitude he expresses has no strings attached, and he is free. With this new lens of gratefulness and acceptance, expressions of gratitude come easy for him. A radical gratefulness that cherishes the gift of life, knowing that he is now embraced for who he is, not his way of living. Today, salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost, says Jesus. No doubt we've all experienced similar feelings of overwhelming sense of gratefulness through our own personal Spirit of Christ encounters. Sometimes they're fleeting, sometimes they're deeper. But I know from my own experience those moments don't protect me from the complexities of life. Our own personal losses through illness, relational breakdowns, and the things out of our control impact us, and it's hard to fix our thoughts on what is true, honourable, right, pure and lovely. Laid on top of our own personal issues, the modern way of communication generally only shares the dysfunction of the world. It invades our life, compromising our ability to be thankful, making it hard to think about the things that are excellent and worthy of praise. The bombardment of promotional campaigns breeding a perpetual dissatisfaction, tainting any fertile soil within our souls, dampening our hope, joy, peace and celebration. We can learn a lot from the early Black Americans who found themselves in a lot darker place than we are. It took looking past the threats of life, finding the good things on the edges of the situation, giving God the glory for them. But it's not easy, is it? It requires a choice and a spiritual practice to see past the immediately perceived threats of life, to see that there is more than immediately apparent. So just quickly have a look. What are the first numbers that you see? Just yell them out. 5 to 8. Yeah, and most of you will see those, that'll be the first immediate numbers you see. But gradually as you sit with it a bit longer, you might actually see 4, 2, 5, 8, 3. And you sit a bit longer, you might actually see 3, 4, 2, 5, 8, 3, 9. Can anybody see them all? You have to look for a while, don't you? The practice of radical gratitude takes this kind of looking, choosing to see past the immediate, looking towards the edges and everything in between, ensures that the whole picture is seen, and being thankful for it all. Thankful for the full gift of life from God as his beloved and giving expression to it. This deep knowing is what gives true meaning, purpose and identity to our lives. We need to listen to this deeper voice that speaks a greater truth, that reminds us who we are. The incessant society messages so easily makes us believe that we're not enough. Jesus invites you and me today and every day to come to his table. It's a personal invitation. Rhonda, will you come to my table today? A place where gifts are abundant. A place where we are all receivers and all givers. A place where there is no debt to pay. A place where we are free from societal expectations, accepted for who we are, not what we have or don't have, not what we've done or not done. Each one of us is at risk of being swept away from this flood of deceptive messages, but it takes a choice not to. a daily spiritual practice. Will you accept Jesus' invitation today to come to his table, today and every day? The choice is yours to accept the invitation. Amen.